Lanaco's protective face masks, which feature its Helix wool air filters, have had a huge surge in demand since the COVID-19 outbreak began. Not all face masks are created equal though, and this wonderful wool filter in Lanaco's product puts it head and shoulders above the rest. Now joining us is Lanaco CEO Nick Davenport. Nick, welcome to Ceres Country. It's a privilege to have you join us because obviously face masks is a huge part of the story at the moment, but you've been around a while in the air filtration business and particularly wool. Can you tell us where it all started?
It started about 10 years ago in another business that I was running, manufacturing goods for industry. And in that area we were manufacturing air filters out of polyester, out of synthetic fibers. And I met a guy who was from the wool interests. He got me pretty excited about the properties of this fiber called wool, and I felt embarrassed that I knew nothing about it. And the further I dug and the more science we did, the more we realized we could actually do something with it. And once that seed was sown, the rest is history. So that was about 10 years ago. And we've been investing heavily in science research about wool to create what we're actually doing now. So what we're actually seeing now is something that's been a long time in the planning, and a long time and a lot of money in the execution, and it goes right back to the core of farming. So it's been a fantastic journey to create a whole platform from farm to face.
Farm to face, how great's that? Now this air filtration and particularly the masks, the idea was well before any idea of a pandemic. It was much to do with the high levels of pollution in a lot of our Chinese cities. What's the sort of size of this global market, air filtration?
Yeah, well, the business plan was built with face masks being part of it. But basically it's respiratory filtration, what people breathe. And so far as I know, everybody who can't breathe is no longer with us. So it affects every one of the 7.7 billion people on the planet. And the World Health Organization attributes approximately 7 million deaths per year to poor air quality. So that was what was driving what we were doing. On top of that, the COVID-19 situation is very, very small in terms of impact on those deaths, but a lot of profile, because the whole dialogue, everybody now knows what a face mask is and what it's for, whereas perhaps before they didn't.
I'd like to talk about the transportation industry and the filtration opportunities within cabin transportation, both in the air and on trains, and of course within people's homes and apartments where they can't actually open the window like we have the wonderful freedom of doing here in New Zealand. You've been able to sort of work your way into those types of markets, and is wool getting an understanding within those markets for its properties?
Oh, look, it's early days yet. We've certainly got applications in a wide range of activities and areas in everywhere from the home to commerce to in the workplace. So it's basically where people are breathing when there is potentially a particulate hazard or a dangerous particle in the air that they can breathe. So that covers everywhere, not just China, not just in industry, but everywhere. So trains, planes, automobiles, even spaceships.
Now, in terms of this farm to face, your relationship with the wool interests you discuss, what have you learnt about the value chain in terms of lifting the farm gate price of wool and how dire it has gone? And let's talk about those contracts with Carrfields Primary Wool and establishing a new way of doing business that is of benefit to our farmers.
Yeah, well, this started right at the beginning as well, because we kind of realised that the farming industry had been around a lot longer than I had or our industry had, and therefore they were heavily invested in the genetics and what they were running. And I realised if we were going to compete against large volume, consistent, even synthetic materials, we had to have a very strong scientific background and understanding of what we could get from a wool fibre and how it could perform equally at a higher price, because there's no way that we were ever going to build a business and pay our farmer $2 a kilogram for his wool So we needed to incentivize farmers to grow the wool that we wanted, and to do that we would have to pay them, and we'd be prepared to pay them. So if they could deliver the quantities and the qualities that we needed to deliver the performance that the market demanded. So we're strongly market driven, and that's really the fundamental thing behind the difference between what Lanaco is doing and why it's invested in its own breeding program to produce genetics that suit the market and also can deliver value right through the supply chain. So our market model says that you, as a farmer, if you come into our program, you will be rewarded because you are supplying a market which is really driving human health. You're saving lives. You're not just producing something that you're going to be walking on. So it's a big difference, a fundamental difference.
I have, on behalf of the farmers watching, some of those key questions that they haven't asked, but I know they would want to, is what type of quality, what type of genetics, and what type of micron, and how, what type of price is it going to be to make it worth me changing my farming system for? A few there, but what you can answer.
There's a few questions, and I promise I won't answer all of them immediately. I guess that also starts back when I was fortunate enough to meet a gentleman who was a very successful and recognised sheep breeder, and he was just at that stage coming out of the completion of the Headwaters program, which was a genetics program which has resulted in Tamana lamb, the highest health lamb meat, to deliver high value, to deliver something that a farmer is going to get greater returns from. And when he said he wanted a wool objective to breed to. And what I said I wanted was a fibre production program that I could rely on and control. So how could we do that? So there are many elements in the genetics which make up that sustainable value that we can get from both meat and from wool. I think in the long term, our program will be able to drive on wool alone. As the world moves on, I think it's a very exciting place for it to be. And those genetics, which we call Astino, so we have developed, funded, and managed all of the data, and it was a strongly data-driven program on the performance of that wool fibre. So our elite genetics and our grower contracts, which come from those elite genetics, are quite unique in the industry, I believe. But they were something that we had to undertake from first principles to build something which is going to be durable and going to deliver value. And there's no point in delivering value unless you can deliver volume. And the current situation has certainly given us a kicker.
Nick, to close, what are you most excited about creating a huge opportunity out of this crisis known as COVID-19 for our farmers?
I think it's going to spread around the world. We've had a lot of inquiries ever since COVID from March onwards. Just today we had a large inquiry from a large chain in the US with 10,000 stores who want to put filters in. That will put our New Zealand wool in front of the faces of millions of Americans. And that's pretty exciting. So that's just a beginning.
Oh, see, thank you so much for taking the time to join us as CEO for Lanaco, Nick Davenport there, speaking about the huge global demand for these Kiwi-made wool face masks. But there's, as Nick said, there's huge amounts of opportunity.
This is Sarah's Country.